December 16th, 1944. 0530 hours. The Ardennes forest, Belgium. The snow hasn't stopped falling for 3 days. You can almost feel it biting through wool coats and frozen gloves, muffling the sound of engines and footsteps alike. Pine branches sag under the weight of ice. Somewhere in the darkness, a German artillery officer strikes a match, shielding the flame from the wind as he checks his watch. Then the guns open. Hundreds of artillery pieces erupt at once, their flashes tearing holes in the winter night. The ground shudders. Telephone wires snap. American outposts vanish in clouds of dirt, snow, and splintered timber. For the men of the U.S. 99th Infantry Division, dug into foxholes along quiet forest roads, the war they thought was winding down has just exploded back to life. Far behind the front, in a warm room lit by maps and desk lamps, German officers allow themselves something they have not felt in months. Confidence. At OKW headquarters and Panzer command posts stretching from Prüm to Bitburg, staff officers crowd around situation maps as runners bring in reports. American lines are breaking. Roads are open. The weather is perfect, low clouds grounding Allied aircraft. The gamble Adolf Hitler has forced upon them is working. This is Wacht am Rhein, the last great offensive. And somewhere on those maps, deep in eastern France, sits an American army that German commanders have already dismissed. Patton. To the Germans, Third Army is facing east. It is pointed at the Saar, postured for a slow, grinding attack against the Siegfried Line. Its supply routes are stretched. Its armor is committed. Its commander, George Smith Patton Jr., is known, flamboyant, loud, predictable. Aggressive to a fault. No serious German planner believes Patton can do anything meaningful about the Ardennes breakthrough. Certainly not in time. In a panzer headquarters near the town of Diekirch, a colonel taps the map with a pencil and smirks. If the Americans try to respond, they'll come from the north or the west. The roads are clogged. The weather is brutal. Units will need days just to turn around. Someone jokes that Patton would need to bend his entire army at a right angle. Laughter ripples around the table. A 90-degree turn in winter, with hundreds of thousands of men, thousands of vehicles under combat conditions. Impossible. They mark Bastogne, a quiet Belgian crossroads town, as a speed bump. The 101st Airborne, rushed in by truck, will be crushed. Panzer Lehr Division and the 2nd Panzer Division will punch through, seize the Meuse River and keep going. Antwerp is the prize. The war will be changed. Back in France, while German commanders laugh over maps, George Patton is awake. He has been awake for hours. Verdun, December 16th, morning. The room is cold despite the stove. Patton stands rigid, helmet on the table beside him, eyes locked on a wall map crowded with pins and grease pencil arrows. Reports are coming in fast now, confused, fragmented, urgent. Enemy armor reported west of the Our River. Communications lost with V Corps. Infantry falling back. Most generals would need time. Patton doesn't ask for it. He feels it immediately, that familiar tightening in his chest. This is not a local counterattack. This is not noise. This is a full-scale offensive, and it has caught the Allies flat-footed. But Patton has been here before. He remembers Sicily. He remembers racing across France after the breakout at Avranches. He remembers how speed, violent, relentless speed, has broken German plans again and again. He doesn't pace. He doesn't raise his voice. He turns to his staff. "Gentlemen," he says quietly, "this is it." Within hours, the Third Army headquarters hums like a kicked hornet's nest. Telephones scream. Typewriters clatter. Officers sprint between rooms with armfuls of orders. Fuel officers argue with quartermasters. Traffic control units are alerted. Engineers are pulled from sleep. Patton wants something no one has ever attempted at this scale. He wants to turn an entire field army north, now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. 3 corps, over 250,000 men, thousands of tanks, half-tracks, trucks, artillery pieces. All of it must pivot 90 degrees, abandon eastward attack plans, and drive straight into the teeth of a German offensive, through snow, ice, and roads already choked with refugees and retreating units. His chief of staff, Major General Hobart, hesitates for half a second, not because it's impossible, but because the consequences of failure would be catastrophic. Patton doesn't wait for objections. "We're going to relieve Bastogne," he says. Someone asks how long it will take. Patton doesn't look up from the map. 48 hours. The room goes silent. Outside, snow continues to fall. German tanks grind forward through the Ardennes, their commanders confident that no American force can possibly be reorganized in time to stop them. They have no idea that, at this very moment, the army they mocked is already moving. And once it starts, it won't stop. Engines roar to life in the dark. December 17th, 1944. Somewhere between Nancy and the Luxembourg border. Headlights are forbidden. Drivers peer through narrow slits of visibility, snowflakes streaking sideways across windshields. The roads are ribbons of ice, barely wide enough for 2 trucks to pass without scraping mirrors. Every mile is a gamble. Yet the columns keep moving. Third Army does not turn so much as snap into motion. Orders ripple outward from Patton's headquarters like shockwaves. Corps commanders reroute entire divisions on the fly. Military police are thrown into intersections with white armbands and flashlights, waving traffic through like orchestra conductors in a blizzard. This is not a maneuver rehearsed on a map table. This is improvisation at full speed. The 4th Armored Division swings north, its Sherman tanks coughing clouds of white exhaust into the frozen air. The 26th Infantry Division abandons its attack positions along the Saar, packs up under enemy observation, and marches through the night. Artillery units limber up, guns clanking and chains rattling, while engineers rush ahead to clear wrecks and widen frozen roads. Everywhere men are confused. They weren't told why, only where. Change of direction, officers bark. New heading, north. Some soldiers think the Germans have broken through behind them. Others believe Patton has lost his mind. A tank commander mutters that you can't just pivot an army like a parade formation. Not in this weather, not with the enemy watching. But Patton has already anticipated the chaos. Weeks earlier, during a staff exercise no one else took seriously, he had forced his officers to plan a sudden pivot north. Routes were studied. Traffic flow was timed. Contingency fuel dumps were quietly positioned. Even the weather brutal. Grounding Allied aircraft is now working in his favor, masking movement from German reconnaissance. Speed is everything. The order from Patton is blunt: drive until you can't, then fix it, then drive again. Truck engines seize in the cold. Mechanics crawl beneath vehicles with bare hands, burning fingers on metal, pouring antifreeze and gasoline where it doesn't belong just to keep motors alive. Infantrymen walk beside their rides to lighten loads. When roads clog, MPs reroute entire divisions through villages that have not seen a column this large since Napoleon. The snow keeps falling. At German headquarters, reports trickle in, then stall. Reconnaissance flights are grounded. Radio intercepts are confused. No one is watching the southern shoulder of the Ardennes, not closely. Why would they? Patton is facing the wrong way. Or so they think. By December 18th, something begins to feel off. A German liaison officer near Echternach notes unusual traffic patterns. American radio chatter spikes. Prisoners mention units that shouldn't be anywhere near the Ardennes. A panzer officer frowns at a map, trying to reconcile the reports. He dismisses it. Probably retreating units. Probably reserves shifting rearward. Certainly not an organized counterattack. Meanwhile, Bastogne is tightening into a noose. The 101st Airborne Division, rushed in by truck, digs foxholes into frozen ground with bayonets and helmet rims. Ammunition is counted. Medical supplies vanish fast. German artillery brackets the town, shells slamming into stone buildings and crossroads. Panzer Lehr and the 2nd Panzer Division circle like wolves. German commanders are in no hurry. Bastogne will fall when it falls. Their real prize is the Meuse. Then on December 19th, something extraordinary happens. Patton arrives at an Allied conference in Verdun. The room is thick with cigarette smoke and fatigue. Eisenhower sits at the head of the table, jaw clenched, staring at a situation map that looks worse by the hour. Montgomery is cautious. Bradley is shaken. The question hangs unspoken in the air. How do we stop this? Eisenhower asks if anyone can counterattack the southern flank of the Bulge. Before anyone else can speak, Patton answers, I can attack in 3 days. The room freezes. 3 days, in this weather, with his army facing the opposite direction. Eisenhower stares at him, searching for doubt. Patton doesn't blink. He has already given the orders. The columns are already moving. The turn is already happening. That night, Patton writes in his diary that he feels a peculiar sense of elation. The gamble is in motion. But as Third Army surges north toward Bastogne, German armored spearheads are still advancing west, convinced the Americans are reeling, disorganized, and blind. They are about to discover the cost of that assumption. Because somewhere ahead, in the snow-covered fields and forests south of Bastogne, Patton's lead elements are already bumping into German outposts. And the laughter in those Panzer headquarters is about to stop. December 22, 1944. Just south of Bastogne. Dawn comes late and gray, bleeding slowly into a sky the color of cold steel. Snow crunches under boots. The wind carries the distant thud of artillery, closer now, much closer. A German infantry lieutenant peers through frost-coated binoculars and stiffens. On the far edge of the tree line, shapes are moving. At first he assumes they are stragglers, remnants of American units fleeing the collapse. Then the sound reaches him, not panicked engines, not scattered fire. Organized movement. Tracks grinding, engines revving in unison. The unmistakable silhouette of an M4 Sherman tank edges into view, its white star half obscured by mud and snow. More follow. The lieutenant lowers his glasses slowly. Das ist unmöglich, he mutters. This is not how this is supposed to happen. Within minutes, German radios crackle with urgent messages. American armor has been spotted south of Bastogne, not reconnaissance, not light units. A full armored thrust. At Panzer Lehr's command post, officers gather around a map now crowded with new red grease pencil marks. The southern flank, long considered safe, is suddenly alive. Reports pile up faster than they can be dismissed. 4th Armored Division. 26th Infantry Division. Combat Commands A and B advancing aggressively. Someone mentions Patton. The name hangs in the air. Back in Bastogne, the situation is desperate. Snow has turned foxholes into ice boxes. Wounded men are stacked in basements without heat. German shells smash into the town square, tearing buildings apart one floor at a time. When a German envoy arrives under a white flag demanding surrender, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe listens, jaw tight, then scribbles a reply on a scrap of paper. Nuts. The message is sent back through the snow. But defiance alone will not break the ring tightening around the town. Ammunition is low. Food is almost gone. If no relief comes soon, bravado will turn into bodies. And then late that morning, The sound changes. American artillery opens up from the south. Not scattered fire. Not hopeful probing. A rolling barrage. Shells slam into German positions with methodical precision, chewing through foxholes and shattering tree trunks. Infantry follows close behind, moving with purpose, bayonets fixed, tanks crawling forward like steel beasts. This is no improvisation. This is Patton's army, exactly where German planners swore it could never be. At higher headquarters, disbelief gives way to anger, then to fear. German commanders begin issuing frantic orders to reorient divisions already committed westward. Fuel columns are redirected. Units meant for the Meuse are pulled back to face a threat that should not exist. The timetable is breaking. Every hour spent turning to face Patton is an hour lost on the offensive. Every tank burned south of Bastogne is one that will never reach the river. And Patton is pressing hard. He doesn't pause to dress lines or wait for perfect coordination. Speed remains the weapon. Lead elements of the 4th Armored Division punch forward through villages like Chaumont and Assenois, trading shots at point-blank range in narrow streets. A Sherman takes a hit and burns. Another rolls past it without slowing. The order is simple: get to Bastogne. German resistance stiffens as the realization fully sets in. This is not a raid. This is a relief effort at full force, and it is already bending their flank inward. On December 26th, just after noon, a Sherman from Combat Command rumbles down a snow-packed road near Assenois. Infantrymen wave frantically. The tank commander, Lieutenant Charles Boggess, spots paratroopers ahead, dirty, hollow-eyed, grinning through frozen faces. The ring is broken. Bastogne is relieved. The moment ripples outward instantly. Radio messages fly. Patton's staff allows themselves a single breath. Inside Bastogne, men weep openly. Others simply sit down in the snow, exhausted beyond words. But for the German command, the meaning is far darker. Patton has not just saved a town. He has shattered the illusion that the Ardennes offensive can succeed. The southern shoulder of the Bulge is collapsing. The Meuse is now out of reach. Divisions are bleeding themselves white trying to contain an enemy that appeared out of nowhere, faster than doctrine, whether, or reason said was possible. The laughter is gone. In its place is a cold understanding. The initiative has shifted, and it may never come back. But Patton is not finished. Because now that the turn is complete, he intends to do what he does best: attack, relentlessly until the enemy breaks. And the Germans, already stretched to the limit, are about to learn what it means to be hunted in winter. The snow stops. December 27, 1944. The southern edge of the Bulge. The silence that follows feels almost unnatural. Smoke hangs low over shattered villages. Burned-out vehicles line the roads, frozen hulks locked in place like gravestones. Somewhere, a lone machine gun chatters, then fades. For the German command, this is the sound of time slipping away. The Ardennes offensive was never meant to become a prolonged fight. Every order, every risk, every desperate allocation of fuel was built around speed. Reach the Meuse, split the Allied armies, force a negotiated peace in the West. Patton's 90-degree turn has broken that clock. German divisions now face south and west simultaneously, their strength divided, their supply lines tangled. Tank crews sit in vehicles with nearly empty fuel tanks, engines idling only when absolutely necessary. Ammunition dumps are shelled. Roads are clogged not with advance columns but with wounded and wreckage. Field Marshal Walter Model, commanding Army Group B, studies reports with a growing sense of inevitability. The offensive is bleeding itself dry, and the Americans, far from panicking, are surging back with renewed aggression. Patton gives them no space to breathe. Third Army does not halt after Bastogne. It grinds forward village by village, ridge by ridge. Infantry clears forests still echoing with the crack of rifles. Artillery fires continuously, shells walking forward in carefully measured lifts. When resistance stiffens, Patton throws in another unit, another push, another angle. German officers note with grim clarity that this is no longer about holding ground. It is about survival. The psychological shift is devastating. Units that had surged forward with confidence days earlier now dig in hastily, unsure where the next blow will fall. Orders contradict each other. Pull back, hold, counterattack. No, disengage. Fuel shortages paralyze armored units. Tanks are abandoned intact, crews spiking guns and melting into the woods. Patton's intelligence officers collect prisoners who shake their heads in disbelief, repeating the same question in broken English. How so fast? By early January, the bulge is shrinking. Allied pressure from north and south begins to squeeze the salient inward. Patton's forces link with units advancing from the north, sealing off pockets of German resistance. What began as Hitler's bold gamble is now an attritional nightmare. Patton, ever theatrical, is already looking beyond the immediate victory. He urges higher command to keep pushing, to turn retreat into rout. He wants to cross rivers, seize crossings, keep the Germans off balance until spring. Some of his proposals are done. The war still has its politics. Still, the damage is done. The German High Command conducts its post-mortems quietly. Staff officers admit, often reluctantly, that the offensive might have succeeded, or at least lasted longer, had Third Army remained pinned facing east. But Patton did not remain pinned. He bent the rules, he bent the map, he bent expectations. The 90-degree turn, once a punchline in Panzer headquarters, becomes a case study in shock, speed, and audacity. German officers who survived the winter speak of it years later with a mixture of respect and bitterness. They had calculated American limits. Patton exceeded them. As the snow melts and the front stabilizes, one truth becomes clear across both sides of the lines. The Battle of the Bulge has failed not because the Germans lacked courage or skill, but because they underestimated how fast an enemy could think and move. The Ardennes was meant to be remembered as Germany's final triumph. Instead, it becomes the moment their last hope froze in the snow. And